Hey there, bestie. I'm Loriemi, your What to Read Next podcast host. Join me as we dive into exciting new reads that'll have you reaching for your TBR pile in no time. From group of mysteries to spicy romances, we'll explore it all and help you find your next favorite book. So grab a cup of tea, cozy it up, and let's discover some amazing reads together. Hi, Tara. Welcome to What to Read Next podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was born in India and traveled the world because that was just my dad's job. We lived in a bunch of different countries, including South Africa. And I found myself with a degree in classics and not quite knowing what I wanted to do next once I graduated school. And so after that, I was like, I would like to be a novelist in the English countryside, but this doesn't seem like the quickest career path. And my father's Asian, and he was like, well, absolutely not. And so then I looked at film and television, and I've built myself a career as a TV executive, but that novel bug never quite left me. My cousin is a novelist. My grandaunt was a novelist. And I have a new book coming out, my debut. It's called The Magnificent Ruins in November.
So I love this. So how did you balance writing books? Because I don't know if this is your first book or maybe your 10th book and this is the first one that gets published. What was your process of like writing the book while having this busy career? Because I'm assuming working in TV is it's not a lazy girl job. There's more to it. And so how did you were able to balance doing both?
I would give a lot for it to be a lazy girl job some days.
Yeah.
But you're right. No, it isn't. I think to write, you can never stop, right? And so I never did stop. When I was fresh out of high school and didn't quite know what I wanted to do next, I worked in the Indian theater for a while and wrote plays that were eventually performed in the UK and in India. I wrote a short story called 8C somewhere along the way that won a prize, the Rick DeMarinis Prize. In graduate school at Columbia University, even though I was there for a producing degree for film and TV, I ended up taking several writers' classes. And out of one of those, it was called Other People's Secrets. Out of one of those came my novel, the genesis for what would become my novel. And I think the first part of that answer is that I never stopped writing. I just did it alongside, and I couldn't not do it. So I made time for it. Right now, I have a career that I've settled into and a routine that I'm talking to you very early in the morning. I usually wake up very early in the morning, write, and then go to work. But it hasn't always been quite so routine based. It has been about snatching time wherever I can in between graduate school, taking another class, doing something late at night, waking up really early, and just getting it done.
Yeah. It's prioritizing the things that matter for you. It's probably like a creative escape from the mundane of the daily tasks, and it just gives you that little breathing room, but at the same time prioritizing. And it's very easy to just set it to the side because it's like we're so busy, we got too much going on. But obviously you have a work product that shows that it's worth the time. Even if you didn't have a work product, even if you just did it for the sake of doing it, it's still like it's just as important for your whole being.
Yeah, for so many years with novel writing, it is that you really don't know. I mean, I have a second book now and an agent, and it's a different process. And even then, there's the constant fear of, oh, who's not going to like it? Are we going to get to publication? But with the first one, with the debut, the one that we're here to talk about, it took me 7 years of writing into the void, let me tell you. You don't know if anyone's going to read this, if it matters to anyone outside of yourself. It's just you and your laptop. So you really have to like the doing of it.
Yeah. So let's talk about The Magnificent Ruins, which is a simple story of someone who inherits a house and it just comes back to town and sees their life unravel in some ways and experiencing from a millennial perspective. what is it like to come back to your past and confront your family and all the different secrets? Tell us the elevator pitch.
Okay. So The Magnificent Ruins is about Lila, who is your average millennial, makes complicated choices about her career, her friendships, her lovers. She lives in Brooklyn and she's a rising books editor.
Hmm.
One morning, Lila wakes up to discover that her beloved paternal grandfather is dead and he lived in India. And he's also left her the enormous family mansion. The only catch is that Lila's mother, who she's estranged from, as well as her grandmother and a whole host of relatives, still live in the house. When Lila goes back, she must confront much more than paperwork. She's got to come to terms with the secrets that have lain buried in the house for decades. And she also has familial, loving, reuniting to do that's not always pleasant or easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in some ways it's a very like sometimes you wish you were like, okay, generational wealth, you inherit a house and then all the great things, but then it comes with the baggage of whether the secrets, the family, expectations, the maintenance, whatever it is, there's some baggage. And I think it makes such a fertile ground for storytelling because it gives you kind of like this place of like how to conflict and how to unravel the story. What decisions, what choices will you make? And if you were in her shoes and having this opportunity to not only heal, but at the same time grow and face new challenges and let go of the life that you left behind. It's such a really great ground for a story.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit, and I've talked about the book a bit, but you've kind of hit on really what is the core of it, which is that the house and its various problems become a canvas for the family and
Yeah.
their various problems. And neither is easier than the other, but both
Yeah.
are so intertwined. Lila also, for me, it was really important to talk about what multiple definitions of home
Yeah.
mean for an immigrant. Lila is really caught between things. She's caught between Brooklyn and Calcutta. She's caught between a man in Brooklyn and a man in Calcutta. She is caught between generations of handling trauma in a specific way. She's caught between her mother and her grandmother. So it really was a trying to at every level juxtapose the past and the present in a specific way.
Yeah, I think that's like fascinating, especially as an immigrant. It's gonna be. I actually grew up in Puerto Rico, and I moved to the states
Wow.
in my for college. And it's funny enough, like I'm in my 40s now, and I'm looking at my experience. Even though I'm not a typical immigrant, that Puerto Rico's a Commonwealth, has different things, but it's a culture shock from one place to the other and how to assimilate. Especially the US is such a hard place to assimilate. There's an
Mhm.
expectation that you're just supposed to do this. And then coming back home and you're like, but you're different. And the idea like you have spent some time outside of it. And then coming back and trying to adapt and see how much the world has changed too,
Mhm.
because your idea of what home used to look like 20 years ago, 5 years ago is very different from what it is now. And so I think it like jumping, like living in both worlds and trying to find your identity, how to merge those identity into who you are. It's a challenging process.
Yeah. I mean, you must then very intimately understand what it means to sort of when I'm in India, I feel more American than I
Yes.
could feel that I am. And when I'm here, I feel more Indian than
Yes.
ever. And so I think being from two places is a very valuable thing. But for all of those people, understanding what home and identity means is kind of like a lifelong exercise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I think it's a fascinating thing. I love that authors are writing about these experiences and experiences from first generation to even just people who recently moved and stuff like that, and to share voices that, are reflected in today's society. And at the same time, from a millennial perspective, because as millennials, we have we were told one thing and we realized very quickly or very slowly that the life that we were promised is very different than what we
Right.
live. And the choices that we are making are very different from our parents' choices, like very like near, and we have a set of baggage that our parents didn't have. And so I think it's like it's how do you combine it all together? And I'm so excited for this book because I think it brings another voice for that experience of an immigrant, but experience of a millennial immigrant and the experience of yeah, yes, as we're told, generation wealth will be great, but then the reality is like actually there's a laundry list that you gotta deal with.
Yeah, and I wanted to tell something specifically from that millennial perspective because it is also a generation like we're a little bit on either
Yeah,
end of the spectrum,
yeah,
right? And I also did want to write an entertaining,
yeah,
fun read that was also an examination of the cultures of silence.
yeah,
You would understand that sort of inhabit each society, and we end up having prejudices, and that lens is really re-examined when we go back or
yeah.
come back.
So I'm very excited. The Minute Experience is will be out on sale by the time this episode airs. So feel free to download it or buy it or get the audiobook and listen to it. So Tara, what kind of books do you tend to read?
Literary fiction, for the
Yep.
most part. I was making a list for you, and I realized that there are commonalities between my favorite books, but I would say that I'm pretty open genre-wise.
Yeah.
I don't read a lot of hard-boiled pulp, but outside of that, but I have read the occasional Graham Greene, but outside of that, I think pretty much everything.
Yeah. So do you have any books to recommend your listeners to pick up?
Yeah. Let me just
Take your time.
pull something up. Okay. Okay. The first one, it's most of my favorite books I've read a long time ago.
Mhm.
This one I read fairly recently. It won the Booker, and before it did, I had read the author's first book. It's called The Beasting by Paul Murray, and it is a family saga. There's a specific incident that is the crux of the novel, and it is a beasting that happens to someone. And you'd think that would be an innocuous incident, but what ends up happening is that it completely unravels the lives of the families concerned in such an interesting way, which then the author, telling it from various points of views, sort of brings together and collides. And it's one of those twisty, turny family sagas that just hurtle towards a final finish, but you're like, so invested in these characters that you are along for the ride. It's also a very intimate portrait of the 2018 financial crisis in Ireland, told from various class perspectives as well. But I would say, all of that aside, these family members, I know them. And I'm not Irish. Every single one of us do. And it just is so richly observed and very fun as well.
Oh my gosh, I'm adding this one. You have me a family saga, and you have me a people that I probably can really know them. Trying to
Yes.
witness that. It's so late. It's
Yeah, exactly. Me too. All of the above. Second book, and this is where I laugh to myself because of the overlap. Also by another beloved author. She owns a bookstore called Parnassus. Anne Patchett. This was her seventh novel, Commonwealth. Have you read it?
yes.
Okay. Well, then, I mean, God, a single incident, in this case, not a bee sting, but an illicit kiss, sort of unravels the lives of two families and creates a blended family. I have a half sister. And in this case, it examines the nature of what step siblings look like, what real siblings look like, what second wives and first wives, and coming from a blended family myself, it's very interesting when those things happen. And again, it starts with that one kiss and sets in motion a series of events that upends the lives and brings about reveals and transformations. And
Yeah.
in the end, it's so uniquely structured that in the end I did gasp with the final understanding, but more so I didn't want them to go away, which is the
Yeah.
hallmark of a great novel in this genre. So definitely get Commonwealth by Anne Patchett.
Yeah, I think Anne Patchett writes like so beautifully and so like connected. Like there's something about her writing that's immersive. There's just like this beautiful story that you just go for the ride. You just like go for it. And I'm kind of like I listen to Tom Lake and The
Yeah.
Dutch House, and those are like yes, the narrators are Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, but it's a writing that just like transports you to that place, to that setting, and to that family, and to that story. And it's yeah, again, it's like a small incident can actually unravel the story, and it's just beautiful. So.
Yeah, there's that opening scene with all those oranges and the gin and the
Yeah.
afternoon and the opening scene where the first incident happens. And I'm just like, I'll never forget that it felt like I was there. It felt like I myself was mildly tipsy and worried about what might happen next.
Yes.
Oh, and the last one. This is a book that the author has maybe been the most influential author to my life. I've read him since I was a teenager, like a lot of Indian millennial kids, a lot of Indians overall. His name is Vikram Seth. He is widely celebrated as one of the finest writers, Indian writers writing in the English language. There are several.
Yeah.
He specifically writes in this lyrical, fluid prose. He's also a poet that just has always, it's very spare yet lyrical, and the writing itself is just such a gift. His first book, A Suitable Boy, was another big heartrending family saga and really such a fine literary masterpiece. It was recognized around the globe as that. But this book is, I would say, a little lesser known. It's called Unequal Music. And it's about a classical violinist and his first great, biggest love. They meet in Vienna. And years later, they have parted ways. And years later, he sees her on a bus. And he must get to her. He is haunted day and night by the memory of her. But things have changed as they do decades later. And it is one of the most beautiful, often painful, yet in that good pain way, love story. It's a love affair for the ages, especially for millennials and people in their 30s and 40s, because it is one all too clear reminder of the great what ifs of our lives, but also the choices that we make at these crucial turning points. Who are we at the end of college? Who are we at the end of grad school? Who are we at the pivotal points for our careers? And what are those choices that we make? They are going to have a ripple effect in the rest of our lives. It's just such a beautiful story.
Oh my gosh, I'm adding this one for sure. Yeah, me, just trying to explore this idea of love and like in a different space. And so, yeah, I am adding this one. I'm bumping this one up. So,
And it's a really, I think you'll get through it really quickly because he writes in that deceptive, light
yeah,
prose way.
yes,
But it cuts really deep, let me tell you.
there we go. There we go. So, Tara, tell us where we can find you online.
Say that again.
Tell us where we can find you online, your website. And
Oh, my website is my first name and my last name. So NayantaraRoy.com. That's NayantaraRoy.com. I am on Instagram as Tara Roy, Taroi. I am occasionally also on Twitter and Threads. Threads is new and feels friendlier and nicer. So I'm there as well. And please reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tara, for being on the show.
Oh my gosh, it was such a pleasure. I can't wait to run into you at some point.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the What to Read Next podcast. If you enjoy our bookish conversations and want more recommendations, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, head on over to the Watch We Next blog for a list of books mentioned in today's show. Happy reading!